My mother didn't invite me to my sister's wedding because she missed me. I learned that 37 minutes after I walked into the ballroom. She pulled me into an empty hallway, looked over her shoulder to make sure nobody was listening, and whispered, "Grace, please, you have to come home with us." I stared at her. 9 years earlier, that same woman had watched me leave our house with one suitcase and $43. She hadn't stopped me. She hadn't called me. She hadn't even asked where I was going to sleep that night. Now she was asking me to come home. So I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? My mother started crying. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "Because your father knows what you became." I didn't understand what she meant until she placed a sealed envelope in my hand. My name was written across the front. Underneath it was a date, 9 years earlier. I opened it. There was a document inside that I had never seen before. My signature was at the bottom, but I had never signed it. I looked at my mother. "What is this?" She swallowed. "The reason your father wanted you gone." For a moment, I couldn't hear the wedding music anymore. I couldn't hear the people laughing behind the doors. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Because suddenly, my sister's wedding wasn't a family reunion. It was the place where a secret my family had buried for 9 years was finally coming back to life. My name is Grace Whitfield, and this is the story of how the family that once told me to leave eventually came looking for me. I grew up believing my family was close. From the outside, we probably looked perfect. My father, Richard, was a cardiologist. My mother, Eleanor, was a pediatrician. My older sister, Emily, was intelligent, disciplined, and determined to follow both of them into medicine. My younger brother, Daniel, was quieter, but he had already decided he wanted to become a surgeon. Our house was full of framed degrees, medical journals, conference photographs, and stories about patients. At dinner, someone was always talking about medicine. And then there was me. I loved computers. Not because I thought technology was glamorous. I just loved the feeling of figuring something out. When I was 15, I built a simple website for a school project. It wasn't impressive. The design was terrible. The code was probably worse. But when I saw it working on my screen, I couldn't stop smiling. My father looked at it for a few seconds. Then he said, "That's nice." I waited. He didn't say anything else. Later that evening, he asked me what medical field I was considering. I told him I wasn't considering one. He thought I was joking. I wasn't. That was when the difference between me and my family stopped being something they found amusing. It became something they considered a problem. My father believed people should follow the path that gave them security. He wasn't a cruel man. At least, I didn't think he was. He had worked hard. He had built a successful medical practice. He believed he was giving his children opportunities he never had. The problem was that he couldn't understand why I didn't want the opportunity he was offering. Whenever I talked about programming, he'd say, "You'll change your mind." When I mentioned computer science programs, he'd say, "That's a hobby, Grace." When I told him I wanted to build software, he'd smile and say, "That's not a career." My mother was gentler. But sometimes, gentle silence can hurt just as much as harsh words. She rarely defended me. She would simply say, "Your father worries about you." I used to think that meant he loved me. Maybe it did, but love without trust can become control. And control was exactly what our family was slowly becoming. When I was 17, I applied to a university several states away. I didn't tell my parents. I was afraid they would make me change my mind before I even had the chance to try. Then, the acceptance letter arrived. I remember opening it alone in my bedroom. I read it 3 times. Then I started crying. Not because I was sad, because for the first time, I could see a future that belonged entirely to me. That night, I told my family. My mother smiled. Emily congratulated me. Daniel asked what the campus was like. Then my father asked, "What are you studying?" "Computer science." The room went quiet. He put down his fork. "Computer science? Yes, you're serious?" "Yes," he looked at my mother. Then, back at me. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you." I shook my head. "No, I'm choosing something different." He leaned back in his chair. "You're 18. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe not." I looked at him, but I know what I want to try. He didn't answer. Dinner ended early that night. The argument happened 3 weeks later. My father told me he wasn't paying for a degree he didn't believe in. I told him I would find another way. He said, "Then you'll be completely on your own." I said, "Okay." He looked surprised. I think he expected me to back down. I didn't. That night, I packed one suitcase. I put in my clothes, my laptop, a few books, and the acceptance letter. When I checked my bank account, I had $43. My mother stood in the hallway while I packed. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. Finally, I walked downstairs. My father was waiting by the front door. He said, "Grace, don't make a dramatic mistake you'll regret." I looked at him. "I've been thinking about this for months." He shook his head. "You'll come back." Maybe that's what hurt most. He wasn't saying goodbye. He was waiting for me to fail. I looked at my mother one last time. She whispered, "You made your choice." I nodded. Then she added, "Now you have to live with it." I opened the door and walked away. No one followed me. The first year was hard, much harder than I had imagined. I worked part-time. I studied late. I learned how to make a dollar stretch across several days. There were nights when I ate cereal for dinner because groceries were more important than anything else. There were mornings when I wanted to quit. But every time I thought about going home, I remembered my father's voice. "You'll come back." So I stayed. I studied harder. I learned faster. I took every opportunity I could find. My first internship came through a professor who noticed the software I had built for a class. That internship became a job. The job became experience. And eventually, I started building software with 3 friends from college. Nothing happened overnight. There was no magical moment where I suddenly became successful. There were years of small victories, a project that finally worked, a client who paid on time, a failed product, a second attempt, a bigger contract, a better apartment, a little more confidence. By 27, our company had become stable. We weren't famous, we weren't billionaires, but we were doing well. I had employees who trusted me, clients who respected my work, and a life I had built myself. My family knew almost none of it. I hadn't told them. Not because I wanted revenge, I just didn't want their approval anymore. Then the wedding invitation arrived. Emily was getting married. I hadn't spoken to her properly in years. I almost threw the invitation away. Then I changed my mind. I wanted to see her. Not to prove anything, not to show off. I just wanted to know whether seeing my family would still hurt. The wedding was held at a beautiful hotel. There were hundreds of guests, doctors, friends, family members I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. I walked into the ballroom alone. For a few minutes, nobody noticed me. Then Daniel saw me. He stopped mid-conversation. "Grace?" I smiled. "Hi." He walked toward me slowly. "You actually came. You invited me." He nodded. "I know." Then Emily appeared. She stared at me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "You look happy." I smiled. "I am." She looked down. "I've missed you." I wasn't sure what to say. Then I saw my mother across the room. She was staring at me, and she wasn't smiling. She looked frightened. My mother crossed the room. She took my hand. "Grace, hi, Mom." She looked at my face for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Please come with me." I followed her into a quiet hallway. She closed the door. Then she started crying. "What's wrong?" She took the envelope from her purse. "This should have been given to you years ago." I looked at it. My name was written on the front. The date underneath it was from 9 years earlier. I opened it. Inside was a financial document. My name was on it. So was my father's. And at the bottom was a signature. Mine. I stared at it. "I didn't sign this." My mother nodded. "I know." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" She took a breath. "It's connected to your education account." I looked at her. "What happened to that money?" She didn't answer. "Mom," she closed her eyes. "Your father used it." I felt my chest tighten. "How much?" she told me. It was enough to explain why my father had been so desperate 9 years earlier. But it didn't explain the signature. It didn't explain why they had kept it from me. And it certainly didn't explain why they wanted me back now. So I asked, "Why are you telling me this tonight?" My mother looked toward the ballroom. Then she whispered, "Because your father knows you found out." I walked back into the ballroom. My father was standing near the windows. He looked older than I remembered. For a moment, I saw the father from my childhood. The man who had taught me how to ride a bicycle. The man who had stayed up with me when I was sick. The man who had once told me I could become anything. Then I remembered the night he told me to leave. I walked toward him. He looked at me. "You've grown up. So have you." He smiled faintly. Then he asked, "Your mother told you?" "Yes." He looked down. I didn't want it to happen this way. I placed the document in front of him. "Did you sign this?" He didn't answer. That was enough. I felt strangely calm. "Why?" He rubbed his forehead. "I was trying to keep the clinic alive. So you used my money? I intended to pay it back. But you didn't." "No. And you forged my signature?" His face tightened. I was desperate. I stared at him. 9 years ago, you told me I was destroying the family because I wanted to study computer science. He looked away. I was angry. No, I shook my head. You were afraid. He looked at me, and for the first time, he didn't deny it. My father finally told me the truth. His practice had been struggling. He had taken loans. Then, another. He was trying to keep his staff employed. He believed that if he could get through one difficult year, everything would recover. But it didn't. He used money that had been set aside for my education. Then he used my information to secure another loan. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself he would fix it. And when I announced that I was leaving for college, he panicked. Because if I stayed, he would have to explain what he had done. If I left, he believed he could fix everything before I ever found out. I stared at him. "So you didn't reject me because of my career?" He shook his head. "No, you rejected me because you were afraid I'd discover the truth." He didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. For 9 years, I had carried the belief that I wasn't good enough for my family. Now I finally knew. It had never been about my worth. It had been about his fear. Later that evening, Emily found me outside. She was crying. I knew about the money. I looked at her. "When?" "After you left." "Then why didn't you tell me?" She wiped her face. "Because Dad told me he would fix it. And you believed him?" "At first." She looked down. "Then I found out he couldn't." I was quiet. She continued. "I wanted to call you." "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" She took a long breath. "Because I was ashamed." That answer surprised me. I had expected excuses. Instead, she gave me the truth. She admitted that she had benefited from the family money. She admitted that she had been afraid of our father. And she admitted something else. Every year, Dad asked if anyone had heard from you. I looked at her. What did you tell him? That you were doing fine. I laughed quietly. You knew? She nodded. I saw an article about your company. I looked away. Why didn't you tell him? She smiled through her tears. Because I wanted him to wonder. For the first time that night, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because it felt good to know that someone in that house had secretly been rooting for me. Before I left the wedding, my father stopped me. Grace, I turned around. He looked exhausted. Will you help me? There it was. The question I had expected all evening. I thought about the clinic, the nurses, the administrative staff, people who had nothing to do with his decisions. Then I thought about myself at 18, $43, one suitcase, no idea what would happen next. I said, I'll help the employees. He looked relieved. But I'm not giving you control of my company. His expression changed, and I'm not hiding the records. He stared at me. Grace, no, my voice was calm. You made your choices. I looked at the document. Now you have to live with them. He lowered his eyes. Then he asked, What do you want from me? I thought about that question. 9 years earlier, I would have said, Love me, believe in me, tell me I was enough. But I didn't want any of that anymore. So I said nothing. He looked surprised. I continued. That is what you don't understand. 9 years ago, I wanted my father. Tonight, I don't need him. The following months were difficult. The financial records were reviewed. The clinic's partners learned what had happened. My father's position became impossible to maintain. He stepped away from the practice. The clinic was eventually reorganized. Some employees kept their jobs. Others found work elsewhere. I made sure the people who hadn't done anything wrong weren't punished for what my father had done. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I knew what it felt like to have your life changed by someone else's decision. My mother retired. Emily moved to another state with her husband. Daniel and I slowly began speaking again. Not like brothers and sisters who had never been separated, but like two adults trying to understand what had happened. And my father? He disappeared from my life for almost a year. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. I almost threw it away. Then I recognized his handwriting. I opened it. He didn't ask me for anything. There were no excuses, no explanation about the clinic, no request for money, just an apology. He wrote, I spent years thinking that being your father gave me the right to decide what was best for you. I stopped reading, then continued. I confused control with protection. That sentence stayed with me. He admitted that he had been afraid of losing his practice, afraid of losing his reputation, afraid that I would discover what he had done, and eventually, afraid that I would never forgive him. At the end of the letter, he wrote, I watched you leave with $43. I thought you were walking away from us. Now I understand that I was the one who pushed you away. If you ever want to speak to me, I'll be here. If you don't, I will understand. I folded the letter. For the first time in 9 years, my father wasn't asking me for anything. He was giving me a choice. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I thought about the little girl who used to sit next to my father while he read medical journals. I thought about the teenager who wanted nothing more than to make her family proud. I thought about the 18-year-old who walked out of that house with $43. And then I thought about the woman sitting at that table now. She had built a life. Not a perfect life, a real one. A life with mistakes, failures, successes, people she loved, people who loved her. A life that belonged to her. And suddenly, I understood something. I had spent years believing that my family had taken something from me. But they hadn't. They had taken 9 years of closeness. They had taken birthdays, Christmases, ordinary dinners, little conversations that can never be recovered. That loss was real. And I wasn't going to pretend it wasn't. But they hadn't taken my future. They hadn't taken my ability to love. They hadn't taken my ability to build something meaningful. And they definitely hadn't taken my worth. I picked up my father's letter again. I didn't forgive him that day. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It isn't something you turn on because someone finally says the right words. But I did something else. I stopped being angry at the 18-year-old version of myself. She had done nothing wrong. She had simply chosen herself. And maybe that was the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes we spend years trying to prove to the people who rejected us that they were wrong. Then one day, we realize we don't care anymore. My mother once told me, "You made your choice. Now live with it." For 9 years, I thought that sentence was a punishment. Now I understand that it was the beginning of my freedom. I did live with my choice. I worked for it. I struggled for it. I cried for it. And eventually, I became proud of it. 9 years after my family rejected me, they wanted me back. But by then, I had stopped asking whether I was worthy of coming home. I had built a home inside my own life, and that was something nobody could take away from me. I eventually called my father, not because he deserved the call, not because I owed him forgiveness. I called because I was tired of carrying the silence. He answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he said, "Hello, Grace." I smiled. "Hi, Dad." And for the first time in 9 years, neither of us pretended everything was okay. We simply talked about the weather, about work, about Emily, about Daniel. Small things, ordinary things. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There was no magical moment where 9 years disappeared. But there was something better. Honesty, and sometimes that's where healing actually begins. Not with forgetting, not with pretending, but with finally being able to look at the people who hurt you without needing them to tell you who you are. If I could go back and speak to that 18-year-old girl standing at the front door with one suitcase and $43, I wouldn't tell her everything would be easy. It wasn't. I wouldn't tell her that everyone would eventually apologize. They didn't. And I wouldn't tell her that leaving would somehow make all the pain disappear. It didn't. I'd simply put my hand on her shoulder and tell her this: you are not losing your family tonight. You are finding yourself. And then I'd tell her something else, something I wish someone had told me much earlier. Don't spend your life trying to become worthy of people who only love the version of you they can control. Because sometimes, the family that lets you go isn't the end of your story. Sometimes, it's the moment your real story finally begins. And now I want to ask you something. If you were Grace, and the people who rejected you suddenly came back when they needed you, would you open the door? Would you forgive them? Would you help them? Or would you protect the life you built and never look back? There isn't one right answer. Tell me what you would do in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between someone else's expectations and your own peace, you already understand Grace's story. This is Calm Family Secrets, where sometimes the deepest family secrets aren't about what happened to us, but about who we become after we survive it.